Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode of Walk in Faith. I'm excited to be sitting down with Tricia Thornton again. Thank you so much, Tricia. And as before I start the interview, I always have to plug your book because I tell everyone what an amazing book it is. But thank you so much for taking some more time to sit down with me. I enjoy this. It's like my
Oh, yeah.
therapy session.
And I love it. Thank you.
I hope I don't get a bill at the end, but I appreciate the time. I really do. Thank you. So, why I wanted to talk to you, especially now, the season is approaching, right? Thanksgiving, it's like as if it doesn't even exist anymore. It goes straight from Halloween to Thanksgiving. So, there's a lot of, whether it's forgiveness, there's a lot going on during the season where people are completely overwhelmed. So, I wanted to sit down with you and just see if we can chat a little bit about the season as it approaches us very quickly.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it is. It's coming upon us.
So the first thing, right? I know this, and most people can relate to this is forgiveness, right? There's such power in forgiveness, and I remember too. I was at a funeral. I think it was my dad actually, and 30, 40 years went by, and he didn't talk to one of his relatives because something took place 30, 40 years ago. When they saw each other at a funeral, they realized that it really wasn't anything of any significance, and all this time has passed, and for all those years, he carried this burden with him. And it's sort of like that analogy where people say it's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to sort of have an effect from it. So tell
Mhm.
me about the importance of forgiveness, especially as we approach Christmas and we're going to be around relatives and friends and people we don't see all the time. What is the power behind forgiveness?
There's a lot of power in it. And we could go, there's whole books, there's whole seminars, there's conferences on forgiveness. So this will be massively quick, but couple of things that I would like to point out about forgiveness is number one, it does start with grace. It starts with grace from God to us. And then it also has to do with inside of us, our relationship with God, our relationship with inside of us. And are we acknowledging the big emotions that we're feeling with inside of us about the situation? One thing that the forgiveness is not about just forgetting. It doesn't, you can still remember the pain and the hurt. But if that keeps you from beginning to move forward and if it overwhelms and overcomes your life and overtakes, then that's when it's out of balance. And so another big piece of forgiveness is boundaries. We can't really, on a human to human level, really embrace forgiveness without setting some emotional boundaries with inside of us. So, like in that instance with your dad and the long time argument with a relative that will get spiked because of the holidays right now, whether you see them or not, Christmas cards start flowing, posts start going. Uh, you pull out your decorations and it reminds you of something from your childhood that then sparks all of that. So there's just emotion every which way, really starting the day after Halloween. Christmas season starts. And like you said, Thanksgiving kind of gets overlooked. So the power of forgiveness is massive because we can't really move. We get stuck in quicksand. We can't really move forward without some idea of letting go. And that has to include boundaries.
Mm. So let's say there is someone, I'm
Mhm.
not going to mention my neighbor who I have to forgive at some point for blowing his leaves on my property every week. But say there's something else, right? Let's say for him, do I need to ring his bell and say, I forgive you? Or is it something internal that I can forgive him? Because, for instance, there are people that hold grudges, and a lot of times these people maybe they're not even alive anymore. I mean, there are people that still hold grudges for parents or people that they're not able to forgive because of the emotional or depression or abuse that took place in their life. We could still forgive someone without actually calling them on the phone or sitting them
Oh,
down.
100%. Because remember, a lot of that starts with us within and not even involving the other person. You can embrace forgiveness and never be in contact with that person again. So, and that is how boundaries comes into place. Now, when it's a close proximity, like a neighbor, like a coworker, um, a friend that you see on a regular basis, or someone that you run into often, that's hard. It's not easy because you are in the proximity of seeing them all the time. But that's where, how can I call it hula hoop boundaries. How can I keep my hula hoop spinning around me? Where then when when the daggers come towards us, whether they're literal or figurative, meaning literal, meaning words, different cut downs or whatever it is that comes towards us, or a memory, how can we keep that hula hoop going around us where that will almost feel like it bounces off?
Mm.
And for me, there's another big word which is called emotional bypassing, and there's spiritual bypassing, which if we don't acknowledge within ourselves first what we're feeling. So let's take it simple, like the leaves blowing. If you don't acknowledge the feeling that you have inside of you when you walk out and see the leaves in your yard, then you're just going to hold that. And then those feelings of that anger and frustration is going to then dominate your day. And so that's the piece. And we can't just say, oh, let it go.
Hmm.
Let's pray about it. You can't just say that. That's not addressing the real crux of what's going on. So it starts with us, with inside of us, with God within, and then go towards others.
I love that. You're right, because if you continue to bury that emotion, it comes out in other places. So let's say it is the leaves, right? And I don't address the issue, or I don't discuss it with them, or maybe even take blame for it, because we can't always be the victim in situations. Like, for
Mm,
instance, maybe he had good intentions, and like my dad 30 years ago, he sees it from his perspective, and when he explains the story, it's he's the victim. Not to say if he sat down with his relative, he could have actually said, "This is why I responded that way," or maybe we saw it in a different way, or they don't really know the context behind it. But if we don't address those issues, like you said, they'll come out in other ways, and I'll go downstairs now and be frustrated with my son because of an issue that I refuse to address, right? These trigger points. We're going to go in the car and I'm going to see a leaf and I'm going to yell and say, "Why did you do this?" even though it has nothing to do with the situation.
exactly.
So how do we handle that? How do we handle issues like that? And are we the victim? How do we come to that acknowledgement that it's not always the other person?
Right. What's our role in things? Also, what's tied in forgiveness is grief on a really bigger level. It's a loss, it's a feeling of out of control. There is that feeling that I can't stop this person from blowing the leaves on my yard. I can't stop this person. So that's where boundaries comes in place. You cannot, I mean, there are some things I guess you could stop. Possibly, I don't know how you would stop the leaves, but if you could stop, like I cannot stop you from saying something rude to me. I'm not controlling you. But what I can control is, what do I do with that when I receive that? I would first, so you were asking, what do we do? The number one first step is just acknowledge. And it's interesting because in my book, I do talk about acknowledgement and forgiveness are two of the seven principles. And if we don't acknowledge within us how we feel, and that is simply done, I say simple, but the whole concept can be difficult. But simply name what you feel. I feel angry that I walked out and the dang leaves are all over the yard. That made me angry. I felt frustrated. I felt powerless. Name those. And then the power that those negative that have on us won't hold us down so long. So if we simply name it, notice it, name it, figure out what we're feeling in our bodies, notice what our bodies are telling us. When you walked out, I guarantee your heart rate started to go up.
Oh yeah.
You started feeling hot. your jaw clenched. Those are beautiful signals that our wonderful bodies and our brain are giving us. Acknowledge them.
And I'm going
If
to
you,
pray
yeah,
my neighbor, and I will ring his bell and ask him because, you got to think too, like the additional stress, right, of the holiday
yes.
season. So all these little triggers, because the leaves
Mhm.
might not even be the real reason. There's an underlying reason. It could be I'm overwhelmed about work or about holidays. And a lot of people now, especially with this season, I love Christmas. Everyone knows I start decorating in September. Me and my son now, we're voting on other houses in the town. Like this is my life during this time.
You love
But
it.
I love it. But what's happening is this season is extending and it's becoming very overwhelming for a lot of people, especially, I mean, for everyone. So how does somebody acknowledge and recognize the season is coming in the sense of the stress, the anxiety? Everyone tries to be, or people try to be perfect or very photogenic, like they have the perfect life where they want to post it on social media during the season when beneath the surface they're struggling. And then January comes and maybe they went through this whole season of overextending themselves or excessive drinking or habits or eating or just loneliness. I mean, there's a lot that goes on, and then January comes. So how could people be aware and recognize, some of the things or the pitfalls that they could avoid before they fall into some of these, fall into a situation during the
Yeah.
season?
Yeah. And one thing I want to make a distinction. So there is seasonal affective disorder. So there is an actual diagnosis, a mental health diagnosis that if and I don't think we're talking about that. That is an extreme level of what we're talking about. But is seasonal anxiety a issue? Absolutely. And I'll tell you what triggers it, or the beginning of the trigger, our bodies is the beginning. Our circadian rhythm gets off when the time change. And so if you're living in a region where daylight savings time is being observed, like we are here in central time zone where I am in Nashville, Tennessee, when I leave this office, and if I have a 4:30 client and I leave, I watched the other day sitting here, the sun is setting. And by the time I'm done with that client, it's pitch black. That is really hard on our bodies. It's hard on our brains. So, and if you, as my parents, are all experiencing this week, including yourself, you've had Halloween and the time change in one full swoop. That about does a family in. I mean, seriously, it is exhausting. So, not only have these little cutie pies had too much sugar, stayed up too late, the whole thing's off, the time change. And so the other day I woke up and I'm like, it's 4:45. Why am I? This is ridiculous, you know? And so it's really hard on our bodies. So that's number one, is the time change is not easy. We can't do anything about it. But if we can just acknowledge that, oh yeah, there really is an actual reason why our bodies are struggling. So then the other issue is light. The light, literally, we don't have as much daylight. And so for me, I have to be intentional to take myself out of this office and go walk outside, because I know darn well I'm not going to get daylight unless I do. So being intentional to go and sit in the sun. I watched somebody the other day. We have a balcony kind of connecting our offices, and there was a gentleman and he just was sitting there and the sun was beating on his face. And I thought, oh, I'm so impressed with him. I'm so glad he's doing that for himself. And what a gift he's given to his body. So being intentional to get yourself out. If you don't have that, there's red light therapy. There's actually light therapy kits that you can buy. Heck, you can get them on Amazon. So you can give yourself some food that will literally nourish your body during this time. So that's one thing. Another thing, and I like to call it, this is not easy, but we call it a shifting to an attitude of gratitude. Not easy to do. So but this can be done so small. So usually when a client comes in, especially my young little clients, I'll say, well, tell me two goods and two maybe not so goods that have happened, or two things that you feel happy about and two not so happy. I don't typically say bad things, but I use the word not so good. And sometimes they will look at me, adults and kids, and be like, I don't really have anything. And I'm like, okay, did you enjoy your snack today at school? And they'll say, yes or no. And I'll keep going, the littlest thing. Do you like your socks that you have on? And sometimes they'll say yes. And I'll be like, then that's what you're thankful for today is your socks. You're thankful for your snack. You're thankful that you even get to blow the leaves because you have pretty trees in your house, in your neighborhood. Like, pick the smallest of things and be thankful for that. Right now in our world with so much happening, we're all feeling kind of, we're feeling a negativeness. It's like a collective dark night of the soul. And so when we all feel that, then we tend to go towards the negative. Another big concept I love to touch on, I will only give you a preview of this, but in my book, one of the things I talk about is a little bit of quantum physics. Do you remember that part in the book?
I don't know if I remember that part.
Okay, so it's QZE, which is the quantum Zeno effect. This is actually in the forgiveness principle. If you're looking at it, page 124. And
Got it right here.
yep, QZE means that yes, if we focus on something for a good bit of time, our brains will then actually, our circuitry will shift and we will begin to absorb that, whatever it is. It can go positive or negative.
Mm.
So, what if we shift and focus on just one small positive? And literally, it could be you're thankful for your pencil. I don't care what it is, it can be as small as that. But if you can kind of go through the season on a daily basis and be very intentional and think, I'm just going to name one thing I'm thankful for in the morning and one thing I'm thankful for in the evening. And it can be as small as your pen. If
Mm.
that's all you're thankful for, that's all you're thankful for.
No, that's very helpful because people, I
But
mean,
it's doable.
it is, and especially like you said, if you focus on one thing, because there is a lot. I mean, there's a lot that happens during these seasons, especially when you have children. I mean, you want to
Mhm,
provide them with everything they ask for. There's
mhm.
a lot that goes on during this
It's a
holiday
lot of
season.
pressure.
A lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure.
There's a lot of pressure, whether you have children or not. It's a lot of pressure. It's a pressure to be and go and do all these things. Another piece is, can we invite just a sliver of silence into our lives that would bring some peace with inside of us? So, what we've kind of said, and I think we'll go back to this at the beginning about forgiveness, it starts within us.
Mm.
It doesn't really have to do as much with others, it's within us.
I love that. So I would say I'm going to take this. So
Yeah.
every day during this holiday season, is take a few minutes of silence, right? Meditation. For me, it's the gym. It's quiet listening. Sometimes it's listening to some sort of, reflection, but it's that quiet time, but also focusing on one or two small things and just focusing on the good qualities of that. Like you said, it could just be as simple as having trees. It could be as simple as just being in a house, being in a safe environment, eating something, just sitting down, but just being grateful for what we have because this is a very stressful time for a lot of people. What would you say to somebody that might be struggling, during this season for various reasons? What would you say to someone?
You're not alone. That lots of people are struggling. So I get it. I hear you. I see you. Um, I would want that person to know that they are a gift and that God sees them as their child and is loved, and they can't do anything to sever that. And um, I also would want them to know that it doesn't mean that you have to take massive shifts. You don't have to change everything. You can just do one teeny small intentional step. And that could be just name something that you're thankful for. And that's all you have to do. It will begin to shift your brain. It will begin to shift you from negative to a little bit more balanced. And remember, it doesn't have to do with perfection, it's connection. It's not about perfection.
I love that. And the one thing that I do before I even got on is every day I take about 2, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and I do a daily devotional and I read and I reflect on it. And it points out a lot of the things that I need to work on, a lot of the things I should be grateful for, but it gives me this balance and this sense of peace. And this is something I've been doing for a long time. So I advise people, especially during this season, to try to develop a relationship with Christ. And also, like I say every time, is to pick up Beyond Blessed. This book, I'm sorry I didn't remember it was page 124, but
I wouldn't expect you to know that.
I wish I was like, wait a second, I don't remember the page, but I but Tricia, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate
Thank you.
it. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Walk in Faith. Always remember you have the ability to inspire and evangelize through words and actions. God bless you.